Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all good and I hope you're all staying safe. So today we are going to be talking about renting versus buying. So maybe you're moving out for the first time and you're like, girl, I don't know whether I should be renting or whether I should be buying. But then I also get a lot of people ask me why I rent where I live and why I buy investment properties. Like they're like, why don't you just buy where you live? So I'm going to answer that at the end as well. But I thought I'd just come and give you the pros and cons of renting versus buying. But before we get into the video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and subscribe. That would really help me out. So let's talk about flexibility. So usually when you're renting, you sign a contract that's either 6 or 12 months, but generally it's 6 months. And this just means that if, say, after 6 months of living there, you don't like it anymore, it's easy for you to just up and leave. Obviously, if you do like where you live, then you can just keep it rolling. But generally, after 6 months, if you don't like where you're living, you can just leave. And I feel like this comes in handy. Say if you've like moved to a new city and you want to try new different areas, then it's easy for you to just do that when you're renting. So you can just be like, okay, let me try this area and then let me try this area. So this is actually what I did when I moved to Birmingham. So I lived in the city centre and then I was like, okay, let me try living like just outside of the city centre, and I moved to a place called Harborne and I was just renting there, and I just had like a little 6-month contract, and thank God I did, because I did not like Harborne. Like I did not like that place. So because I was renting, it was so easy for me to just give up the flat and just move on, and then I moved back to the city centre. And it's actually so funny because I literally always say like, thank God I did not buy in Harborne, because I literally just didn't like the whole area. Like, no, that's just a story for another day, but yeah, I just didn't like the whole area. Renting's also handy as well, because say if you end up getting a new job and you're like, oh, okay, like I really need to live closer to work, then if you're renting, it's just easy to like up and leave and just be done with where you're living. Whereas buying is definitely not a flexible commitment. Let me tell you, it takes so long to buy a property. So the first property that we brought as like an investment, that took like 6 months. The second property took 5. So like it's not a quick process. So imagine if you've bought a property somewhere, you've bought a house or whatever, and you don't like it, you want to move. It's going to take you quite a while to be able to sell it. It's not like renting where it's like you cancel your contract and you can probably move into another place within like a week or something. If you want to sell your house, that's not going to be happening. And imagine you're going to have to find someone who likes your house to buy, and then you're going to have to find one that you want to buy as well. So yeah, buying a house and selling a house is like a long process. So it's not as flexible if you're the type of person who likes to chop and change. And not only that, you could also end up in a situation where when you want to sell, the property house prices have dropped. So imagine, for example, I don't know, the neighbour from absolute hell moves in, you've complained and you're just like, no, do you know what, I need to sell now, I need to get out. Can you imagine you go to sell your property and then the house prices are dropped and you're just like, I can't even get the money that I need for this property. So yeah, 100% it is a big commitment, and I feel like personally this is one of the main reasons that I haven't bought where I live, because I'm so indecisive, and I'm coming up to 3 years living in Birmingham. And in July, I'm moving house again, and that will be the 5th house that I've lived in now. So yeah, I feel like I'm just not ready for that like level of commitment. So yeah, like it's actually a lot to take on if you're like a spontaneous person and you're always changing your mind. So let's talk about cost. So the initial cost of renting is definitely a lot cheaper than buying. So what you usually have to do is put a deposit down, which is usually 1 month's rent, and then put down a month's rent as well. So obviously it depends how much your rent is, but this will be cheaper than buying. And depending on your landlord, you might need to furnish the property or you might not need to furnish the property. So if you're moving out for the first time, then obviously furniture is something that you're obviously going to have to buy, and Lord knows that furniture is not cheap. So your initial costs when it comes to renting are a lot cheaper. So I feel like that's kind of why people are attracted to it, because it's just kind of like easy to get into. However, when you're renting, the monthly payments are going to be a lot higher. So if you do like a side-by-side comparison, you'll find that the rent is going to be higher than the mortgage monthly payments if you bought the property. So yeah, I feel like that's what puts a lot of people off renting, because they see like the monthly payments when it comes to renting and they think like, oh, I could just buy a place and the mortgage payments would be cheaper. But obviously it's each to their own. Like buying doesn't really suit everyone's lifestyle. But I think it is quite common that when you're renting, it does make it harder for you to save. Like I know this firsthand, that when I moved out, like I was just not ready for how expensive it was to actually live on your own and things like that. And I really struggled to save because life is just really expensive. So yeah. However, I would say though that I feel like I get a better quality apartment for renting than I would be able to afford by buying. I don't know, I just feel like that's the case, especially living like proper in the city centre. Like I feel like if I was to go and buy, that would be like hella expensive, whereas to rent it's kind of like, okay, I can kind of afford that. So let's talk about cost when it comes to buying a property. So the big thing is the deposit. So usually you're going to have to put a deposit down of, let's just say like 5 to 25%. It all depends. So say for example, if you want to buy a 200 grand house, to put down a 5% deposit of that is 10 grand. So then you're going to have to save 10 grand to be able to buy that property. So the initial cost to buy a property is obviously a lot more expensive compared to renting. However, your monthly payments on the mortgage will be cheaper than renting if you were to do like a side-by-side comparison. And as well, the higher the deposit you put down, the lower your monthly payments will be. So say for example, on the same property, if you put down a 20% deposit, then your monthly payments will be lower than if you put down a 5% deposit. There is also other costs involved when you buy a property. So there's things like stamp duty, solicitors fees, surveyor's costs, and other things like that. If you want me to do a video about the hidden costs when buying a property, then please let me know. I've been thinking about it for a while, but I was like, oh, I'm not really sure. But if you want me to do that video, then comment down below. So let's talk about making changes to your property. So when you rent a property, you're gonna have to ask your landlord if you want to make any changes. So for example, say if you wanted to hang artwork on the wall, then you're gonna have to ask your landlord if that's okay. Say for example as well, say if you wanted to paint the walls a certain colour, like you might get some landlords where they're like, yeah, that's fine if you do it, but you're gonna have to paint it back at the end after. Some landlords would just straight up say no. Like I know that where I live, like I'm allowed to hang artwork on the wall and things like that, but if I wanted to paint the walls, and that's just a big fat no, like that's just not happening. And I can't really make that many changes, which it does really upset me because obviously I like renovations and things like that. So yeah, that does hurt my feelings. But yeah, when it comes to renting, obviously because you don't own the property, you cannot go crazy and just do whatever you want. Like there's restrictions, and obviously as well, if you do change it and then move out and the landlord's like, what the hell is this? What the hell have you done? You're gonna get in trouble. You will get in trouble. So yeah, it's definitely not as easy to make certain changes, and obviously some landlords are just not going to let you do certain things. And as well, it's really sad because obviously when you rent some places, you're not allowed pets and things like that as well. Just had to throw that in there. There is actually an Instagram page called How I Rent, and it shows you how different people who rent properties, like how they make it feel like their own. So it kind of shows you all the different things they've done to kind of make their house feel like a home. Because I feel like when I first moved out, I definitely felt like the properties weren't mine because like I couldn't do what I wanted in them. So yeah, that Instagram page has definitely been giving me all of the inspiration, and I think I am going to do like a little bit of like a redecor of my apartment. So yeah. Now obviously when you buy a property, you can just literally do whatever you want to it. You can paint all the walls black, you can knock all the walls down, you can take all the flooring up, you can just go crazy and really make it feel like your own. And literally you can just do whatever you want. You don't have to ask anybody, you can just go crazy. So yeah, and I definitely feel like that makes a big difference for a lot of people because they want to feel like they can put their own spin on things and just really have their house being like their house, if that makes sense. So when it comes to maintenance, when you're renting, this is the landlord's responsibility. So for example, in my old apartment, like those apartments were so shoddy and like the work was just shoddy, but obviously that's not my fault. Like it's not my fault that the builders were rubbish. And honestly, there'd just be so many problems all the time. Like sometimes there'd be no hot water, there'd be no heating, my dishwasher would break, my washing machine would break. But all of this was not my fault. So I could just say to the landlord or like to the letting agent, I could just say like, look, this is broken, can you fix it? And obviously with things like hot water and heating, that's something they take very seriously. So like your landlord has a duty to get that sorted, it's not your problem. So yeah, a lot of the maintenance issues your landlord will cover. But obviously, say for example, you've punched a hole in the wall, then you will be responsible for that. But I'm sure you guys are all nice people, you wouldn't do anything to upset your landlords. So if anything goes wrong, then you can just let your landlord know and they will pay for it. However, if you bought a property and there's any maintenance issues, then you are going to have to cover that. So say for example, your boiler breaks down, then you're going to have to pay for that. Or if you've got a leak, then you're going to have to pay for that. All these little like ongoing things that happen naturally in houses, you are going to have to cover the cost of all of that. Right, so let's talk about your long-term investment. So when you buy a property, you can benefit from something called capital appreciation. And basically what this means is that your property will go up in value. So let's just imagine you've bought a property today for 200 grand and you've put down your 10% deposit or whatever. Now imagine in 10, 12 years time, your property could have doubled in value and your property is now worth 400 grand, which is obviously just absolutely amazing. So you could sell the property and then buy a bigger property or buy more properties, or you could refinance on it to pull some of your money out. But obviously having a property double in value is absolutely incredible. And imagine there's a lot of people in say like areas like London where they would have bought properties for like next to nothing, like they would have been next to nothing, and now they're worth millions of pounds. those people are actually millionaires. Like, it's crazy. So that's why long term buying a property is such an amazing thing, and like you can pass it on to your children and build that generational wealth. I'm going to leave a link in the description bar down below to a video called The Racial Wealth Gap Explained, and to me, that video just summed up why property is so important and why buying property is such an essential thing. So yeah, make sure you give that video a watch, because honestly, buying a property, that's where it's at. Also, I don't know why I didn't mention this before, but say if you buy a property and you live in it for say like 3 years, you can switch it onto a buy-to-let mortgage. Like, it doesn't have to be 3 years, that was just an example, but you can switch it onto a buy-to-let mortgage and then get tenants in there to rent it out. And obviously that can work as another income stream for you, which is just absolutely amazing. So when you buy a property, you've got the opportunity to be paid twice, because you can get paid from capital appreciation in the longer term, but then you can also get a monthly income, which is just absolutely amazing. We love property. Right, so long term, when it comes to renting, you can't benefit from any of the capital appreciation. Like, you just can't. You just pay your money monthly. It doesn't matter if you've lived there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. It's not your property to be getting the capital appreciation from. So honestly, it doesn't matter if the value of the property has doubled, quadrupled, gone 10 times, you cannot benefit from the capital appreciation because you don't own the property. So yeah, since I started doing YouTube, I have had quite a few people ask me why I buy investment properties, but why I rent where I live. And for me, at the minute, I still feel like I'm quite young. Like, I'm only 23 and I'm very indecisive, very spontaneous, and like I said before, I'm always moving house, like changing my mind. Like, even if one little thing annoys me, I'm just like, I want to move. Like, I'm moving this month, like I'm only moving like a floor up, but obviously that's like another house move. So yeah, I definitely feel like I'm too indecisive and spontaneous, and I'm just like not ready to commit to like fully buying and like feeling trapped somewhere. Like, yeah, I'm just not ready for that. Like, honestly, I feel like I'm the type of person where I'm just really all over the place and I just don't know if I'm coming or going. And the other main reason is I'm really focusing on building my property business. So let's just say, for example, if you had a 20 grand deposit, if I put that into a property that I live in, I'm not going to be able to get that 20 grand back like quickly and easily. Whereas if I put that 20 grand in an investment property, then I know that I'm getting the money back monthly. And then because of our strategy, so we do a strategy called buy, refurbish, refinance. The strategy involves pulling your money back out. So it's like you can get the money back. Because we do the buy, refurbish, refinance strategy, it means that we can put the money in one property, get it out, put it in another property, get it out, put it in, get it out. So yeah, ultimately that's where my focus is at the minute. It's focused on building the business and growing it, and then after I can think about buying. And I don't know if it's because I have a property business that people think of it differently, but you've kind of got to imagine, if you said to someone like, you can have 20 grand, you can either put it into a business that's going to make like loads and loads of money, or you can buy a house, what would you do? Like, I feel like most people would go and start the business, but I don't know if it's because I do property that they think like, well, why don't you buy where you live? But it's like, because I'm building my business. But I'm not gonna lie to you, like through the whole of lockdown, I was genuinely really thinking about buying, but the only reason I was thinking about buying is because we do like renovations for other people and things like that. I get upset that like I can't renovate my own, and like when we make decisions for our renovations, like we've always got to think about the tenants, and like we can't do certain things because it's like just too far, do you know what I mean? So I feel like I miss out on being able to like make any decision that I want, because ultimately it's for the tenants. And yeah, like I literally always have like so many ideas. Like I'd love to have like a bedroom that was just like all black. I can't do that for the tenants. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? So yeah, I do feel like I miss out on that aspect, because I'd love to like have my own place and just completely do it how like I really wanted to do it. Like obviously when it comes to our rental properties, we do the absolute most, but I just know that when I've got my own property, like it's going to be on another level. So yeah, I do feel like I miss out on that aspect, but ultimately I'm focusing on my business. And obviously as well, once the business is built up, I can buy an amazing property, do the craziest renovation ever, and I'll just be living my best life. So yeah, it's kind of just about delayed gratification at the minute. And as well, if you are thinking about investing in property, then this isn't me saying like you should be renting where you live, like you should be renting, because ultimately if it's going to make you happier to own your own home, then go for it. And as well, I kind of think it depends on what your investment strategy is. So say for example, you might want to just own a few properties so you can pass them on to your kids and things like that. So I'd say then buying your own property isn't like that big of a deal. But I'd say for us, where we're trying to build cash flow and like a full development business, me buying a property at the minute for myself to live in just is not the priority. So yeah, hopefully this video has helped you guys out. Let me know what other videos you want to see down in the comments and I'll be happy to film them. Make sure you give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.